This is Amy, and you're listening to the Talkin' Appalachian podcast. Today, we're taking a journey across the Atlantic from the heathered hills of Scotland to the Hollers of the Appalachian Mountains. And we're doing it through the lens of a wildly popular time-traveling TV show, Outlander. I would love to hear how many of you have watched this series or read the books. It's one of my favorites. I hadn't watched it entirely until this winter, and I'm now wrapping up season 6, and I've learned so much about history and so much about language from it. Read the books if you've got time to do that. So what does 18th century Scots speech have to do with the way your granny says afeard or the way you say might could? Let's rewind to the late 1600s. Large numbers of lowland Scots, many of them Presbyterian, were sent to colonize Northern Ireland, part of what was called the Ulster Plantation. But by the early 1700s, conditions were rough. There was economic strife, there was religious discrimination, and the political climate was pretty volatile. So they left. Between 1717 and 1775, it's estimated that over 200,000 Scots-Irish immigrants came to America. They landed in Pennsylvania and quickly moved down the Great Wagon Road, settling through the Appalachian backcountry. So these weren't just physical migrations, though. The Scots-Irish brought with them centuries of language, which is in large part what this podcast is about. Scots-inflected English, Ulster dialects, and in some cases, a fading touch of Gaelic, and much of that language stuck around. So Michael Montgomery, a linguist who's written extensively about this, calls Appalachian English as a kind of linguistic time capsule. Some examples that we've talked about on the podcast before include afeard, the A prefix, A in front of a word like afeard, affixin to, which has Scots and Northern English origins. Right as an intensifier, it's right cold today or right windy today, which was the case today. Bless your heart, which is an idiomatic structure shared with Irish and Scots speech. I done told you, done, bless a past participle is another example. And double modals like might could or used to could. How does Outlander fit into all this? Well, if you listen closely to Jamie Fraser, or especially Murtagh Fitzgibbons, the grizzled godfather, you hear Scots English, not full-on Gaelic, but a blend of archaic English and Scots dialect. And that cadence, that rhythm, is not far off from what you might hear in Eastern Kentucky or in Southwest Virginia today. So we can even start with the word Outlander, which means outsider, a stranger, or a foreigner in some areas of Appalachia. And it's usually pronounced furriner. In a lot of books, you see this in a lot of books and movies and TV shows. People in Appalachia will call outsiders furriners. The word Outlander was used by Mark Twain in 1924, and it was recorded again in the Ozarks in 1929 and the Great Smoky Mountains in 1927. The Dictionary of American Regional English says it's used chiefly east of the Mississippi. Even phrases like "denifash," don't worry, feel at home in Appalachian turns like don't get your dander up. To fash is to trouble yourself or to worry. And fash was recorded in Pennsylvania in 1870 and West Virginia in the mid-1950s. DARE surveys, the Dictionary of American Regional English surveys that were taken. Bonny and bra are two more words you hear frequently in Outlander, and this is pure Scots. Bonny meaning beautiful or attractive, usually attributed to women, but it was recorded in the 1960s in Appalachia as referencing pleasant weather. Bra references being handsome, brave, worthy, and that's usually attributed to men and boys. In Scotland, a Highlander was someone from the Gaelic-speaking Highlands, the rugged north and west, often viewed as wild and proud and untamed. But here in Appalachia, that word took on a second life. It wasn't just about geography. It became shorthand for a kind of person. Tough, resourceful, loyal, sometimes stubborn, always independent. The Appalachian Highlander identity grew in part from the stories that were passed down about ancestors who crossed the ocean, who carved out lives in these isolated hollers, much like they had back in Inverness. Even the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee, founded in 1932 to support civil rights and labor movements, borrowed that name to tap into those associations. Education, resistance, rootedness. And then there's pop culture, from the Highlander films to Outlander, that turned the word into legend, a lover of freedom and land. Listen as Outlander's Claire, who is a physician, talks about giving medical treatment to 18th century Scotsmen.
I've stitched wounds and set bones for many men. Nearly all the Highlanders. They were terribly brave about it.
And speaking of Highlanders, you may have heard of the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games held every year in North Carolina. I first went to the Highland Games when I was in high school, and I was playing Loretta Tolliver in the Trail of a Lonesome Pine outdoor drama, which we hold every summer here in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. And I was the understudy for June Tolliver, which was the lead role, and I got to play June Tolliver when the girl playing June went on vacation. So I got to play both parts in different parts of the season. But our theater group went together to the Highland Games, and it was a lot of fun. So according to their website, the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games mission is to carry on and promote the annual Grandfather Mountain Highland Games and a gathering of Scottish clans to foster and restore interest in traditional dancing, piping, drumming, athletic achievement, music, and Gaelic culture, and to establish scholarship funds to assist students from Avery County High School to study at American colleges and universities. And if you look at their events guide, they have everything from track and field to dance to a parade of tartans and a torchlight ceremony. They have children's activities, a Scottish cultural village, sheep herding, and then music, piping, drumming, fiddle, Celtic harp, and much, much more. So if you're interested in attending, they're being held July 10th through the 13th this year in 2025. And you can get your tickets online at their website at gmhg.org, which I'll link in the show note. Now, in Season 4, Episode 3 of Outlander, Roger and Bree go to North Carolina to the 1970 Highland Games. And it's there that she falls in love with Roger as he's singing and playing guitar as part of the Parade of Tartans ceremony. That's a really neat connection because in the show, Jamie and Claire, Bree's mother and father, end up in western North Carolina near today's Grandfather Mountain, but they settle on a place called Fraser's Ridge. They're given land grants in the 1700s. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense if you haven't seen the show, but there's some time traveling back and forth, which makes it even more interesting as far as the history goes. But it was nice to see the Highland Games represented there. Want more from the Talkin' Appalachian podcast? Head on over to our Patreon page where you'll get early access to episodes and bonus content like extended interviews with authors Barbara Kingsolver and Jeanette Walls, my interview with a Southwest Virginia woman who survived a concentration camp before moving to Appalachia, and my 3-part series on the language of Appalachian gravestones. Subscribers will be the first to know about any Talkin' Appalachian merch plus discounts. Subscribe on Patreon and Facebook, and if you're not ready to be a paid subscriber, you can subscribe for free and decide later. You can also find the podcast at Talkin' Appalachian on YouTube. So the next time you hear Jamie Fraser say something that sounds familiar or you catch yourself saying might could without thinking, remember that these aren't just quirks, they're echoes. They're echoes of borderland Scots, of Ulster farmers, of Appalachian settlers who kept their language alive. And I think a TV show like Outlander can remind us that language is a bridge. It's a bridge between centuries and countries and people. Speaking of festivals, I want to put a plug in for the Gathering in the Gap Festival here in Southwest Virginia, which is held on Memorial Day weekend. It'll be held May 25th, 2025. We have music all day long. We have vendors, food truck. So some of the musicians that are going to be featured are Dave Egger and Bristol Lightning and the Bellamy Brothers. If you like music from the 70s, you'll recognize the Bellamy Brothers. I think they're going to put on quite a show. So I'm excited about Gathering in the Gap this year. If you're interested in coming, come on down. This part of Appalachia is beautiful this time of year. The mountains really show off in the spring and summer and the fall especially. And where Gathering in the Gap is held, you've got this gorgeous, gorgeous view of the mountains. It's at the Southwest Virginia Museum and State Park. Lots to do and see all day long. So get your tickets. You can go to gatheringinthegap.org and get your tickets there. We're also going to have a literary event there this year featuring Jordan Dodson, who just published his novel, The Ballad of Falling Rock. That will be at 1 o'clock at the public library just below the Gathering in the Gap area, the main event area. So you can get your tickets now and come and join us next month, and it's going to be a good time. Thanks for listening. I just want to say before I close out that I really appreciate the people who listen to this, because this is an investment of your time, and I don't take that lightly, and I try to make sure that every episode is well researched for you. The people who subscribed on Patreon and on Facebook, I mean, it means that you want more. That fills my heart because you like the content. It's a lot of hard work, so thank you for that. Thank you for the people who've paid a few dollars for extra content or to support the show. That means everything. And thank you to people who take the time to email me about the podcast. I got a really nice email the other day that I wanted to share with you from a listener. He said, I just needed to express my gratitude for your support of the Appalachian people. My wife and I came across your podcast a few months ago returning from a work vacation trip. I left home for the Marines at the age of 18. That was 34 years ago. And like a few of your listeners and interviewees, sometimes had to go fist to fist defending ourselves from the onslaught of being labeled mudlick or stupid, nothing hillbilly. After my time in the Marines was up, I thought, okay, maybe things will get better. Knowing that I wanted to go to college, I immediately started my GI Bill. I knew how important college was to me, so I took my classes seriously. My very first class, on the very first day when I walked in and said good morning, the visiting professor stated he didn't mind coming to Kentucky, but us pure Appalachians had no place in his classroom. I work in IT now and have been for about 20 years. I was just told the other day when I arrived on site and fixed an issue that with an accent like mine, it was a wonder that I knew how to fix anything. I can take it as I always have, smile and wave, but thank you for making it better for the people coming up behind me. Thank you, Will, for sharing that, first of all. And second of all, I'm always happy to hear your messages and hear your stories and your anecdotes about your experience in Appalachia, good or bad. And I'm sorry that these things continue to happen and people continue to say these things, but that's why I do this podcast, because I'm hoping that ignorance is usually, lack of knowledge, right? Ignorance is usually what causes people to say these things. Maybe we'll do some good. So thank you so much for listening, for communicating, and for all the support that you give. Come to Gathering in the Gap. I hope I'll see you there. And in the meantime, remember to keep talking Appalachian.